Hi, my channel is usually about my triathlon training lately, but I'm also a gamer. I'm a big fan of games like Bloodborne, Demon Souls, Last Gen. Hopefully they'll make a remake, and also a big fan of Naughty Dog ever since Uncharted 1, really. So I honestly believe that Naughty Dog are probably one of the best game devs of our generation, and as such, when this latest gameplay trailer dropped a few days ago, and after seeing it, I wanted to do a breakdown to show the sort of polish that they've put into it. Some of the things I'll point out I've observed myself, others I've noticed from other people pointing them out, but hopefully I've collected enough information to give you quite an in-depth breakdown of tech, etc., that they're using in this latest iteration of their game engine. If you want, this breakdown will involve a lot of stopping, quite a bit of slow-mo work so you can see things. So if you want to see an uninterrupted version of the trailer, then I'll add that in the description. I also think that Sony are probably one of the ahead of the curve, basically, in terms of understanding the power of video games and how powerful it can be as a storytelling medium. Also, that games can be art, and Naughty Dog, I believe, help them pursue that vision. So they work very well together. So anyway, let's get started, and hopefully you enjoy this breakdown.
Went out one night to make a little round and met Little City and I shot around. Went back home and jumped into bed, 44 pistol under my head. I woke up in the morning about 9:30. The hacks and the bullets standing around. Jets and gamers standing around.
So basically, if you watch the live stream, you'll notice that the audience, the journalists, game journalists, were actually brought into a church hall setting, which looked exactly like this. Sony always trying to present games in a different way. They like to push the envelope on that sort of thing. Some people find it weird. I quite enjoy it. So they basically brought all the game journalists in and set them in this church hall setting, just to add to the atmosphere of when this trailer started. So that, you know, just add to the immersion. So here we see Ellie, and she's obviously all grown up. I mean, we saw a bit of her in the last few trailers with her new tattoo sleeve, as you'll see in a sec. Just pay attention. I'll just move it on a little bit further. Just there. Pay attention at how the camera is working at the moment. The lighting from the lights in the background, just shining off the back of her neck. As I mentioned, you know, Naughty Dog's attention to detail is just on another level compared to other game developers. They pay attention to pretty much everything, and they obviously have some of the best game developers, whether it be modelers, shader artists, shader writers, etc. In the business, because it's just incredible what they can get out of a console. This was apparently rendered in real time off a PlayStation 4. So yeah, so have a look at the lighting, how light reacts against the skin. Look at how the camera here is using excellent depth of field, so that she's focused, but the people dancing in the foreground are out of focus. It's very cinematic, very camera-like.
I began to think I did. Turn the bed and head out of my head. But the just got too slow. They overtook me and jammed.
I hate these things.
So here we meet Jessie, a new character for the first time. Just pay attention to the dialogue.
Tell me about it.
Your old man really laid into me today.
So you can see the dialogue isn't rushed. I think a lot of games make dialogue very unrealistic, maybe a bit too quick fire. I'm not sure why. I find it a bit unnatural. This dialogue seems to come off as very natural. So, and if you just heard what Jesse said, he's referred to Ellie's old man. So obviously Joel is around, but we don't know what he's up to at the moment, and the rest of the game trailer doesn't shed any light on that yet. But I've got a few comments about that at the end of the video, so hopefully stick to that. I'll give you my thoughts on what will happen.
What happened?
Another big lecture about my patrols. Don't go here, don't go there. It's funny how involved it gets whenever you're scheduled to go out.
Yeah.
So, just by Ellie's reaction here, it seems a bit, I don't know, to me it seems she's a bit distant from the discussion about Joel. Like maybe she's had a fight with him, and facial expressions are a little bit indifferent. But also, if you notice, you may have to pay closer attention, and replay this back. But the audio and the lip sync is slightly out by maybe a quarter of a second. I'm hoping that obviously by the final game they'll get it right. It's not enough to be overly annoying, but it is noticeable if you pay very close attention.
She's but not quite the show.
I give you guys 2 weeks until you're back together.
Not gonna happen. She say something to you?
Make it 1 week. Ellie!
So again, the dialogue is very natural. His reaction to her saying that they'll get back together is also just what you'd expect somebody to say in that situation, who's maybe been in a relationship with someone. Did she say something to you about me? So it's all very, very natural.
Hey! What took you so long? Oh, I'm here, aren't I?
Now, I'll replay this a little bit, but this is Dina, another new character that we are introduced to. A couple of things to point out. Pay attention to the bracelet on her right hand. We'll come back to this a bit later on, but just make a note of it. Also, let me just go back a fraction just before she comes in. Now, pay attention that when she comes up, she grabs the drink from Ellie's hand, and have a look at the fluid dynamics in the glass and how it's perfectly synced to the angle of the glass as she drinks it. It's a small detail. A lot of the details I'm pointing out, your subconscious probably picks it up, and because it's done so well, it just comes across as very natural. Here we go.
Oh, I'm here, aren't I?
Dina?
Brilliant. I'm going to go back to this slight interaction here that I also want to show you.
What took you so long? Oh, I'm here, aren't I?
Dina?
Jesse.
Again, very natural dialogue between exes. Her reply is very short, maybe a bit abrupt, like, okay, we're no longer going out together, so I'll be courteous and that's about it. A little bit cold.
Don't forget we leave first light, so get some rest.
So obviously in this community, they have patrols, maybe to protect against other factions, more than likely to clear out clickers or whatever new enemies there are in the new installment. So it's all very well organized.
Yes, sir.
Now, hopefully you noticed the sarcastic salute, but the more interesting part is the role of the eyes. Again, Naughty Dog's motion capture, and particularly in this version of their engine, their eye movement capture is exceptional. It's just outstanding. It's so natural. Just going back a little bit and just watch it again. Just watch Dina's eyes as she turns around.
Don't forget we leave first light, so get some rest.
Yes, sir.
So natural. Let's keep going.
Such a dick. Come on. Don't you start with me. Okay, I have a very serious question for you. How bad do I smell?
So here, again, their facial deformation technology really shows how her nose scrunches up when she goes for that sniff.
Like a hot pile of garbage? Oh, okay.
Okay, again, just before this happens, let's go back a bit. Notice, again, the amazing lighting and how clear her freckles, etc., or the light bounces off the skin. But notice that Ellie's face is dry on her right cheek. So, again, amazing attention to detail from Naughty Dog.
A hot pile of garbage? Oh, okay. Oh, how about that? Gross.
And then, now that the grossness has passed, we can see that Ellie's face has a slight wet patch where their cheeks met. It's very subtle, and when you watch it in real time, it's very easy to miss. But again, it's that attention to detail.
You love it.
At this point, I think we can see from Ellie's face that she's not sure how to take this interaction, whether she's feeling comfortable with it. Maybe she's thinking about what she just told Jesse. Obviously, Dina's getting up close and personal.
Every guy in this room is staring at you right now. Maybe they're staring at you.
Also worth pointing out here that Dina's obviously just finished dancing, so her face is still flushed, red. She's still sweaty.
Not. Maybe they're jealous of you. I'm just a girl.
We can see that the love or sexual tension is building between them.
Not a threat.
Again, the eye movements are just phenomenal across all the characters, actually.
Oh, Ellie. I think they should be terrified.
Let's go back a bit. Again, notice the bracelet.
I think they should be terrified.
Oops, let's go back a bit further. Yeah. Notice how the head deforms as it's pushed back.
I think they should be terrified.
Now, obviously, if you played The Last of Us DLC, you'll know that Ellie had a kiss with the other character there, so you should know by now that she has she was gay. So, but the way that she's reacting now is she's not fully committed to this interaction, because she's still got her eyes open while Dean's kissing her. It's also worth pointing out that we now realise that Dean is bisexual. She was obviously going out with Jesse previously, and now she's obviously into Ellie. Worth pointing out that at this point we see as the kiss goes into its second phase, if you like, Ellie's now fully committed. Now, from a technology perspective, the lip and facial deformation is just outstanding. Notice how when the nose meets the cheek, it also deforms slightly. It all just looks very, very real. In a panel, Neil Druckmann and the team pointed out that this is all new tech that they've built into this engine. If you know anything about Naughty Dog's engines, each game that they release, when they alternate between Uncharted and Last of Us, they just add new things each time, just improve on the previous tech. So this is just the latest enhancement to their engine. Now, here obviously the music's changed, and we are now in what looks like the woods, and Ellie's performed some sort of sneak attack on someone. Again, pointing out, if you look at her right, well, the hand holding the knife, you'll see the bracelet that was on Dina's hand. So I believe the team have mentioned that this is sort of like a revenge mission, so a revenge story arc. And if you watch the previous trailers, that fits in with that narrative. So let's see. Now, this is okay. This is quite a brutal scene, obviously, but again, the attention to detail. As Ellie's stabbed this guy on the right-hand side, she's obviously hit the jugular, and as she pulls the knife out, possibly her flick knife, the jugular spurts out blood, which is the biggest artery that we have in our neck. So all again, attention to detail, and she goes in for the finish. And it all feels very, very, very brutal and real. In the Uncharted series, deaths are very, I wouldn't say fun, but they're trivialized and possibly glorified because it's that whole Indiana Jones vibe. So, when you're shooting the enemies, you go through maybe 200-300 in game, and it's just some senseless, nameless bad guy, quote unquote, and you're just trying to get through to find your treasure. in Last of Us, each kill feels brutal. Each kill feels like you're dealing with a real person. Some people call it hyper-realistic. I think that's an incorrect description. It's just realistic. It's just showing killing in all its brutality. It's not a fun thing. Ellie's doing it to survive, or possibly in this game to avenge Dina. We'll find out more later on, but again, it's not glorifying violence. It's violence as a necessity. And if you look in the bottom right, we're now in gameplay. You see the first indication of the HUD. It's a very simplistic HUD. I'm not sure if they've turned off other aspects of the HUD, but you can see on the right hand side the white semicircle, which looks to be the health bar, which is the health bar as you watch the rest of the video. Now the circle in the middle is quite interesting, because you'll notice as she progresses through this section that the grey area gets bigger and smaller. The bigger the area, the bigger the grey circle, the more visible she is, and the smaller it is, the less visible she is. So we'll see some of that in a sec, and I'll point it out again. I'm just having a look at my notes. Now, just pay attention to the lighting. There's a light through the woods just above her head in the distance. The rendering, as always, on Naughty Dog games is always next level. You'd think you're watching stuff like this on a high-end PC, and it's actually being rendered on a PS4 Pro. Now, you just started hearing some whistling. I'll point this up. I'll say something about that a bit more. But just look ahead of her on the right-hand side, just in front of her. You'll notice some frogs jumping around. Oh, and one thing which just going back here. So back here. As she moves forward, just pay close attention. Watch her right hand. She's got the knife in it, then she puts it away and wipes her hand. Like, what other game dev has that sort of attention there? If you know another game dev that pays attention to this level of detail, I want to know about them. I want to play their games. Add a comment letting me know who that game dev is. I've yet to come across a game dev on any platform that mocaps this level of detail and leaves it in the game. Look at that lighting. It's just spectacular. So here we see the first interaction with the foliage. If anybody's played Uncharted 4, they had a really good hiding in the grass foliage mechanic in there. They've obviously taken that tech and, as always, taken it to the next level. Excuse me. You'll see from the from the HUD, that the visibility area, she's now, as she's hiding in the ferns, her visibility is now from the enemy is now almost negligible. It's like a small grey area now. taken as. The hanging people we saw in the previous trailer, the Paris game show one, I think it was, where we were introduced to this religious cult. So one presumes that this is we're part of this religious cult. They have a name which I've had written down somewhere. What were they called? Seraphines, I think it was. Seraphines. So did you notice there that the NPC whistled, and then we hear off in the distance that there was a reply. So these enemies are obviously using some sort of whistling communication system. At the panel, the team mentioned that in the past, when one enemy knew where you were, all the enemies in the area would get to know where you are. But in the new engine, it has a propagation type system. So one enemy will whistle to another enemy within a particular range, and that enemy will then inform the next people within the next range about your whereabouts. So there's like a ripple effect as that information spreads out, which is, again, more realistic to what you'd find in a real world situation. Now, off to the left-hand side, you can just see the words she, you. It's actually a poster. I think the camera swings around slightly, maybe. There it is, yeah. Where the words are actually, may she guide you. Now, is this referring to the cult leader? We don't know yet. We've not seen the ultimate bad guy hasn't been introduced yet, so we'll just have to wait and see what that's about. But I believe it has some sort of religious connotation. Maybe the leader of the cult is female, so women play a very big part, it seems, in this cult community. We'll see a bit more of that shortly. And going back to the whistling, so they're using some a sort of like whistling mechanic to communicate, and it's obviously something like something along the lines of "Everything okay? Yes, all clear here," as they let each other know, and the whistling changes when a friend is down and or an enemy is spotted. So we hear somebody in distress in the distance. Again, watch the visibility marker on the right hand side. There. So obviously they've now introduced a new prone mechanic, and as you can see, the visibility is almost it's hard to see grey dots. So she's obviously at the most camouflaged at the moment. I think they've taken a lot of stuff. I believe back in just before Last of Us came out, they had a meeting with the Metal Gear Solid team, Kojima, etc. And Metal Gear Solid games have a visibility mechanic, should I say. And looks like they've taken some of the ideas there and implemented it in the Last of Us engine, and now with the new prone mechanic, you can see that she's almost invisible. Metal Gear Solid actually showed you a percentage of how much you were camouflaged, but this quickly gives you a very quick guide of, you're like 99% invisible at this point when you're in a prone position in foliage. So obviously, if you were standing up, you'd still have a certain level of cover, as it were, and as you crouch down, that visibility decreases until you're prone and you're almost not visible. Now, notice the guy who's hanging from the lamppost. He's standing on a bucket, very similar to the trailer that we saw previously. Oh, that's it. They're called the Seraphites. Here's the notes. If you have a look at this particular scene, the lighting again is just phenomenal. The brightness from all three torches. So it seems like they're using, each torch is creating its own illumination, and then all three torches together created an even brighter area. So if there was only two torches here, then there'd still be light, but not as bright, etc. So each torch is obviously gives off a certain value of illumination for the scene. Another thing worth noting here is, again, brilliant mocap being seen, where the guy who's about to do the stabbing has his left foot forward and his right hand raised, ready to stab. And again, this is the perfect stance you take to throw a ball the furthest, and also in this case to do maximum damage when you stab. If you listen to the audio, it says a very similar thing to what was said in the previous game reveal, quite brutal one, where wings were clipped, and he says, nested with sin. So this is what they do to the people that they believe are nested with sin. And the scene is, again, not glorifying violence at all. It's just brutality at its worst, as he's stabbed in the stomach, and he's obviously writhing around in pain, having his oxygen cut off while dealing with the fact that he's just been stabbed in the stomach. Now, pay attention to this next part, where the bad guy, as it were, I hate using that term, but because they all have their own motives, while the guy doing the stabbing is disemboweling this guy who's hanging, and have a look at how their entrails disemboweling technology displays the blood in the entrails. So there. So worth paying attention to now is after the guy's disemboweled this guy, watch what he does with his hands. Again, they're small details, but again add to the whole realism of the scene. Now, did you see there how they all reacted to this new whistle tone, which is very different to the other whistles? So this whistle is obviously, one of our people's down. There must be an enemy in the area, and they all go into alert mode.
Spread out.
So this is the first time we see the HUD. Again, it's very minimalistic, but it should be familiar. We've got bow and arrow, a gun, and it looks like we have slots for Molotovs and health kit and smoke bombs, etc. Again, more signal whistling in the background. Notice again how minimalistic this HUD is. Obviously, it's something you can pick up. Looks explosive, like from the icon, but again, it doesn't because it's so minimalistic. It doesn't distract you from the immersion, really. Now, off to the left, you'll notice, well, just above the car in front of her, there's an enemy. But if you look very carefully to the left, you will see some shadows being cast by another enemy who's on this level. This player obviously knows the level, probably played 1,000 times, whereas playing through this, so knows when to move to not get spotted by the enemy on this level. But it's just worth noting that you can see a shadow being cast with what looks like somebody with a bow and arrow. With a bow, at least. Now, okay, let's keep going. Okay, I'm going to switch to slow-mo here because there's so much to see, and it's best watched in slow motion. And then I'll rewind to this point and play it through fast so you can see it all in all its glory. But let's go in slow-mo for now. As you can see, she's spotted as she turns around. Now, a couple of things. Again, fantastic lighting being done by the fire that we see here. Look how it lights up the front of Ellie's face, while also lighting up the front of this teenage boy's face. And if you listen carefully, he just yelled out "wolf." Now, it seems like this might be a code word for enemy, but there could also be a bit of artistic license here because it's the boy who cried wolf. Let's go back and you can hear it again, and I'll let it play through the next bit. Now, I don't remember you being able to kill children in the previous game. If you remember that happening, let me know in the comments below. But just an interesting thought anyway. I don't remember that. Notice the motion blur as the camera swings round, and we now have that guy that she was about to sneak up on, who now obviously knows she's there from the boy. The boy is yelling, coming at her. Also notice that the camera angle is typically in a third-person shooter or action game, the camera would be directly behind, slightly above, but in this game trailer, I'm not sure if it's just for the game trailer or if it's going to be a fixed thing, the camera's slightly over the right shoulder, which makes it more cinematic because you can see more of what's happening. Now, pay attention here because Naughty Dog have introduced a dodge mechanic, and this is the first time we see it in action. So, and also as she's gone in for the slash, we see the blood coming off. If you look at her right hand, you can see the blood trail just going back. Again, the lighting interacting brilliantly with the guy's bald head and his clothes. Again, another dodge. Again, another slash. Again, blood going everywhere. So Ellie's trying to fight off these two people, one with a machete, one with a hammer. Now, again, if you just did that on purpose so that you can see the reaction on the woman's face as she got stabbed in the throat, of that of sort of like utter surprise of, oh my god, I've just been stabbed, and also the grimace of the pain of being stabbed in the throat. And very realistically, like anyone would do, she's reaching towards the neck where she was just stabbed. We'll have to see if you stab in different areas, if enemies reach towards that area, NPCs reach towards that area of injury, but this is very realistic. And this is a new mechanic that Naughty Dog have mentioned, that you can now disarm enemies mid-combat. I'm guessing it's only certain enemies, because if the enemy is stronger than you, then you won't be able to just rip their weapon from their hand. But this is this appears to be new in the new game engine. I'll just go back slowly. And you notice that she blocked with her left hand there as when she went before grabbing the hammer and finishing her off. Again, you see the blood going in the direction of where the woman's falling as she falls towards the fire, and we have blood smear on the camera lens. So here we have Ellie being macheted, and again brilliant motion blending. Their animation blending, should I say, is just brilliantly done. And Ellie also reaches towards the area where she was just slashed. Worth pointing out, again, this is a very nice touch, is the woman that was just smacked in the mouth has just fallen into the fire, and that has caused sparks to fly from the fire. I'll rewind it again so you can see it. So there's a lot going on in the foreground and the background. Maybe a bit too far, but I'll let it go through. There, you see the sparks are flying in the background as she falls into the campfire there. Another dodge. So she now uses the hammer. Now watch the reaction of the guy, how his body reacts to each blow. Also notice that weapons, the hammer that she's holding in the bottom right, have limited use, just like in the previous game. So after a certain number of hits, the weapon wears out and breaks. Now, something I missed the first few times and during this scene is just the very last hit. Now, fraction. Okay, so pay attention that on the third hit, just before she hits him with the back of the claw hammer, she spins the hammer mid-swing. 1, 2, watch it spin. There, can you see? And bang. And the hammer breaks as well. Okay, let me just rewind that back and just watch it. and I'll switch it back to normal mode so you can just see it in all its glorious fluidity. Again, she's shot and she reaches for the area where she's been shot. Again, the ducking mechanic has been around, well, ducking while you're being shot has been around since Uncharted days, but it is very good to see, because it doesn't matter how macho you are, you'd be a nutter to not react to being shot at, and ducking and flinching. The flinching mechanic has been around since Uncharted 1, and it was one of the first things I noticed when I played it back then, and it just adds to the whole realism of the situation of having bullets flying around your head. If you just walk around normally, then the higher you are, the more likely you are to get shot in the head or upper body. So flinching is a very natural reaction to gunshots. So obviously with the tall grass mechanic from Uncharted 4, they've improved on that. Again, the visibility indicator shows that she's maybe only about 20% visible at the moment.
She went into the grass. Watch yourself.
Or 80% hidden, if you want to think of it another way. So, crawling under vehicles and other spaces is also something new. They only tended to happen in special situations, almost like in cutscenes in previous games, but now it's part of the engine. During the panel, they mentioned that now the AI had to be updated, because when they're searching for you, they can't just search at waist level, they now need to search at ground level as well when they're looking for the enemy. Well, you being the enemy in this case.
Ethan. Wolf.
Now, notice that with the characters, the NPCs refer to each other by name. Again, they're referring to Ellie as Wolf. Listen to it again. But the important thing here is that the characters refer to each other by name. So that is it really adds to the whole realism of that you're dealing with a community of people who know each other. In Uncharted, it's very rare that people talk to each other, but they don't really refer to each other by name. They mentioned that they've added this to the engine so that it just makes it feel that you're coming up against a tightly knit group in terms of this cult.
Ethan. Wolf. She came through here. Damn it. Double back. Go.
Now, again, the impact of the bullet rocks the head back, and as you watch the next bit, the death animation is just very realistic. Again, brutal in all of its aspects. And just as she slumps, you can see where the bullet actually went into her face and her cheek. And obviously, as you saw, because she's used a gun rather than a silent kill, that's alerted anybody in the area. And here we see the AI coming straight for her, and she's under the car, and she's being pulled out. Now, notice the use of him calling her "you wretch." Again, this is very oldie-worldy type language, very religious term to call somebody a wretch, which fits in fantastically with the narrative of this being a cult, a religious cult. This is also the first time that we see any sort of like on-screen QuickTime event prompt. Again, it is very minimalistic, so we're not sure if they only show this HUD sometimes and not other times, or if it's only if they're just showing it in this instance to show off that it is there, but not always there. Now I'm going to switch to slow-mo, just so you can see how she reacts to, how the enemy reacts to her pushing him off her. And again, each impact, depending on the size of the enemy, affects them. Again, calling him out by name. Poor Ethan's just died. Just remember, bad guys have families too, and have communities. So the guy in the distance just calling out his name, having seen his fellow cult member die. What a waste of bullet, but again, watch the impact zones, watch how the bullet impacts the enemy in this next section. And notice that it would seem that this enemy may be a smaller enemy than the Ethan character, because the bullets had more of an impact on how they threw him about. So it looks like the weight of the enemy will affect how the bullet affects their the impact on them. Again, she's missed a shot here, and the NPC reacts as you would expect. Just get out of the way just in case, sort of thing. Even though, realistically you wouldn't be able to dodge a bullet, but any human in that situation, noticing that the bullet's whizzing past them, will just take a step out of the way. Just, again, feels very natural. Okay, so here we have an arrow impacting Ellie and just throwing her back. Again, at this sort of range with the bow and arrow, you would be thrown back. Notice the HUD now has an R1 option, which indicates that you have an arrow embedded within you. So let's switch to normal mode. Keep going. So during the panel, the Naughty Dog team mentioned that they've added a jump button now, so we're seeing that in action here. And I'm going to switch over to slow-mo again, because this next section is very, very interesting. So watch the fluidity of how they've improved their blending animations. See an object, grab it, throw it. We see an arrow just flew past her head from the enemy that was behind her, that had just shot her. She immediately uses grabs the enemy. Obviously that enemy doesn't know that her gun is out of bullets. And she can use it use the enemy as a shield, but the person firing the arrow probably let off the arrow just before Ellie turned around and has killed her own cult member. Just rewind that again and you can see it in full flight after the jump. It's just spectacular to watch in real time because it's just so fluid. And the realization that you can't see Ellie's face, but you can see as the woman that she's holding hostage dies, she almost has a split second of, oh my god, okay, I can't use her as a shield anymore. Yeah, she looks at the enemy, realizes she's dead. Oh dear, I can't use her as an enemy anymore. Again, it's a very, very subtle animation, but it just again adds to the realism of the whole intensity of the situation. Again, the enemies communicating with each other. Obviously, they're all in the vicinity now, so they've switched from whistling to saying stuff like wolf, or in this case, I have eyes. You know, I have eyes on the enemy, so everyone else knows where to come now. All the enemies know where to come. Oh, yeah, going back to that explosion. Sorry, not explosion. Gunshot to the window. Notice that in this situation, that the glass panel explodes, and the glass pieces are in different sizes. It's not like a uniform explosion of glass. So depending on where the glass hits, the shards of glass break off in different sizes. Because the enemies are standing perfectly in a triangle, it is clear that you've got 3 enemies to deal with. I'm guessing that's part of the scripting of the AI, so that you as the player know, well, okay, I've got 3 people to deal with in this area for now. But it's very cinematic and very clear to you without actually you prompting or you having to go into any modes or anything to find out how many enemies you have to deal with. Here we see Ellie in the foreground using the character's using this R1 to remove the arrow from her shoulder. I'm hoping that in the final game there'll be different types of arrows you can use or that the enemy can use. For example, a poisoned arrow, which if you don't remove in time will cause your health to drop faster and faster. And so you obviously have to find shelter and pull out the arrow sooner rather than later, and maybe apply an antidote. Again, that would be very Metal Gear Solid. If you've played Metal Gear Solid 3, there was a mechanic there where if you got bitten by a snake, you'd have to take some sort of antidote quite quickly, or your health would just deplete until you died. So it'd be nice to see that in this situation of Last of Us Engine. Now, Ellie, due to her size, can obviously squeeze through tight spaces. They've mentioned this as being part of the new mechanics, so you can squeeze through areas like this or under things that are quite narrow. Again, that goes in with the new prone position, allowing it to do that. Notice here that she's prompted, because she's out of arrows, so she's prompted to grab an arrow here. Pay attention, pay very close attention to how this dead body reacts as she pulls the arrow out, and also the way that she pulls it out feels like it really is embedded into this this dead man. The whole animation sequence looks very weighty, and just that little, again, very slight attention to detail as she pulls out the arrow. The head of the dead guy rocks towards the direction of where the arrow was. I'd like them to take it further so that once, presumably, the arrows stuck the guy to that counter, so as she pulls it out, he slumps to the side there for maybe a second or two, and then slumps over, maybe generating some sound that you can use that sort of mechanic to maybe distract the enemy as they come to investigate this slumping body sound. But we'll see. Maybe they won't go to that level, but it'd be nice to see. Pay attention. I'll just rewind this fraction. Yeah. So pay attention to the glass rendering here, this woman's face, and also the enemy in the background. You can't see my cursor, but there's the guy with the hammer just walking behind this glass cosmetic counter, and watch how the translucency effect as he walks behind the glass works fantastically, or beautifully well. That is just amazing. Here we see the crafting mechanic in action. This is the first time it looks you can make your own type of arrows now. In this case, she's making an explosive arrow. Okay, I'm going to go into slow-mo again, because right here there's a lot happening in the next few seconds, so we'll slow it down so you can see it more clearly. Okay, watch what happens when the exploding arrow impacts. You'll notice that the enemy in the background essentially disintegrates, but also watch the enemy that's directly in front of her and how he reacts to the explosion. Here we go. There. Just a fraction. Go back. Here, watch it again. See if I can stop it. There, as you can see, the guy in the distance obviously disintegrates from the explosion, but the enemy here instinctively shields his face from the blast, which obviously stuns him and gives Ellie an opportunity to come in for an attack. Again, a bit like the hammer, I didn't mention it earlier, but I think Naughty Dog is showing off what I'm calling their embedding technology, so that weapons go into a person at a particular distance depending on what you're hitting. So if you're going into skull, a weapon will only go in a certain amount compared to, say, when you stab someone. The same you saw with their embedding of the arrow into your body, so that you then have to pull it out. So it goes, the arrow's impact will go in a certain distance. Now notice here as she pulls him forward, as she pulls forward to try and dislodge the machete, it pulls the guy forward. Again, the inverse kinematics here is just outstanding. Too far. watch how the counter in the background, how the physics on the counter in the background as he's pulled forward as well. Another dodge. Now, I mean that particular scene looks fantastic. Hold on. The throw over the counter looks very, very realistic. But on a side note, personally, I'm not a big fan of enemies throwing their enemies away from them. I don't think that it's very realistic. It's just a pet peeve of mine. I don't like it in Hollywood films, and I don't think it's necessary in games. If you're that big, the last thing you would do is throw somebody across a room, because that gives the opportunity for that person to get up and run away, because you've created distance. If anybody's done any martial arts, they'll talk to you about closing distance. So, but anyway, that aside, by throwing that person away, you're giving that person time to recover, etc. I think it would have been more realistic if he'd picked her up and maybe thrown her to the ground, or just pushed her to the ground to then try and kill her, finish her off with a hammer, and maybe she can like dodge that or something similar to get out of the situation, rather than throwing her over. I mean, it looks fantastic, and the glass shattering is very, very impressive, but I think I've never found that mechanic in films or games very realistic. Now, pay attention here to, again, there's dodge mechanic, but watch the actual sledgehammer as it hits the counter to the right of Ellie, and how weighty it feels that it's embedded into the counter, that he has to then pull it out. So, again, giving her a fraction of a second. That is comes across as very realistic. There, so you can see that he had to like physically use his strength to remove the hammer from the stuff that he just smashed into. Again, it'll be interesting to see how easy it is for this dodge mechanic to work. Will it be like Dark Souls, where you have to know that it's coming and you've got a window to press the dodge button? Or is there a quick time event that they're just not prompting for, and maybe they've just turned it off for this trailer? Again, she's still through. We've always had the flanking mechanic, so enemies are always looking for you in the last location where you're seen. And she immediately alerts the big guy that she's seen Ellie. And again, the next few seconds are quite brutal on this woman. The visceral embedding technology in action, you'll see it again. Watch closely. What's interesting, very interesting here, is as she finishes her off, this looks so natural, and again, this is part of this new engine. As the NPC dies, her arrows seem to naturally fall out of her quiver for Ellie to pick up. And again, it's not a case of you just touch the item and it magically appears in the quiver. They've added the full animation now, where she picks it up and visually puts it into her quiver. This impact on Ellie feels so brutal, and you can see her health bar just just almost vanish without one hit. Another dodge. Now, I just stopped it there because have a look at the enemy's face here. As each arrow enters, he grimaces with pain. Again, when you play it back at full speed, you almost don't see it. You can see probably the next one a bit more easily. There. So, and he groans at the impact. Again, these are such a level of detail that I've not seen in any other game. With that sort of motion capture, you just feel that every arrow is hurting this guy, as big as he is. Other games have these big guys that take, they're like bullet or ammo sponges, and they don't react, they don't feel pain, they just get hit a few times and then their health bar is 0 and they die. This is, Last of Us is not like that. This game engine is not like that. Every hit, everything feels very real, very visceral. Now, pay close attention here on the ground as the guy moves his hand. He's obviously bleeding, and he's basically watch the blood smudge. Again, a very, very small detail. You miss it when it's happening very quickly. Look at that. Just the attention to detail. Incredible. Let me go back a bit. Just this last bit, and I'll just play it at normal speed. So as she moves in, that the enemy seems to be reciting a prayer, something along the lines as "Noble is the sacrificed lamb," I believe is what he's saying, which is interesting because it seems that this cult sees themselves as lambs, and the enemy is called Wolf. So I'm not sure how many people have picked up on that, but it's just very interesting that he's referring to himself and saying his last prayers, and says, "Noble is the sacrificed lamb," and so they obviously see themselves as the underdogs, and they're the innocent ones, and the people around them are the enemy, the wolves. Now, I stopped it here specifically because, again, amazing attention to detail in the mocap, in that just as the machete is about to hit him in the neck, he flinches in that direction. He just does a slight flinch in that direction. Again, I might slow-mo it just slightly, just so you can see it. It's just an incredible subtle effect. There. Now, and you probably heard the words a bit clearer there. "Noble is the sacrificed lamb, for he," and just as he got to that part, we don't know what he was going to say, but it was his reading himself his own rights because he knew he was going to die. And it feels like he's gladly sacrificing his life for a noble cause. Now, the camera swings round at this point, and I think this is really Naughty Dog just showing off their embedding technology. Again, you see that the knife, that swing wasn't powerful enough to go straight through, and they swing around just to show it off. And also a natural reaction is the guy who's just had this stuck into his neck. He's reaching up to grab the weapon. And again, notice how when she pulls it out, the inverse kinematics also rocks him slightly, because it's obviously stuck, and she's got to make an effort to pull it out so she can take another swing. And 1, 2, 3, we're back in the room with our facial deformation technology. I can't remember if I mentioned at the beginning, but yeah, this is all new tech that Naughty Dog are working on. And if you get a chance, I'll add a link in the description. Watch the panel discussion, because they do talk about how they filmed the scene in this church hall, and also how they mocap the kiss as well. It's not as easy as it sounds. Lots of tweaking.
See, I told you. He should be terrified.
And this last bit here is, notice how Ellie's just blushing from what Dean's just said. It's a bit worrying that she's thinking about massacring while she's been killing, but maybe that's just a story element just for the trailer. I'd be very surprised if that's how it works in the full game. I mean, they do have a history of jumping through timelines in the Uncharted world, so you never know. But I think it just shows that Ellie is a product of her environment, her upbringing, and her need to survive in this brutal new world. Yeah, just going back to the blushing. So she's blushing, and she's blushing specifically across her cheeks. Her freckles are now more noticeable. Again, just very, very impressive blushing tech being used here. Obviously an evolution of the sweating tech that they had on Dina when she just finished dancing, and her face was all red from the exercise of moving around. So, what can I say? A very, very, very impressive tech demo of their engine and gameplay. It all just seems so fluid. Again, if you know of a game developer that has this level of detail, I think I've covered most things. If you've noticed something that I haven't, or that I haven't heard somebody else mention, then comment in there below. It'd be great to know about it. I'll repeat again, if you know a game developer that pays this much attention to detail as Naughty Dog, I want to know about them as soon as possible so I can play their games. I love this level of detail and immersion that it adds to the storytelling. Now, final thoughts on the trailer. Lots of people are yelling, "Where's Joel?" But as Jesse mentioned at the beginning, he's obviously in the world. Maybe he's running the place by the sound of it. I suspect, like when The Last of Us was first revealed, each game show they seem to drip feed something. Obviously, at the Paris game show, they showed that they introduced us to the cult. Here, they introduced us to gameplay and gameplay elements and all the new mechanics, or quite a few of the new mechanics. I'm guessing in a future games conference, probably Germany at Gamescom in August, they'll show us what Joel's up to, or a Tokyo Game Show, and one of those two, because Tokyo Game Show's in September. So we'll get drip-fed another aspect of the game in August. And at Tokyo Game Show, we'll get something else. maybe, as I said, either Joel, or maybe they'll show us the clickers. The panel mentioned that there are new classes of clickers, so we're going to have some new enemy types on the clicker front. In one of the earlier game trailers, we saw the clickers at the very end. Actually, at the end of the Paris game one, you can hear the clicks coming in, and that's where the trailer finished. So I would probably expect a release date at the Tokyo Game Show, because that's obviously Sony's big game show, because they're a Japanese company. So, and I think that's where they'll announce it, because Last of Us is also very big in Japan. I hope that's basically it. I hope you like my level of detail. I've been going for nearly an hour now looking at this, or over an hour, should I say. But I felt compelled because I'm such a big Naughty Dog and Last of Us fan. I probably won't be able to do another deep dive like this until after my triathlon race in July. But if you think you'd like to see as detailed a breakdown of some other game trailer, then let me know in the comments. If you like it, obviously hit the like button and let other people know about it. If you like to keep fit and also like games, then subscribe. Anyway, let me know your thoughts below. Look forward to hearing from fans of the game, and either way, what you like, what you didn't like. Always love to hear both sides. Anyway, thanks, and bye for now.